Hey, it's Bruce and Billy with Deep South Sauce Company here for B&B Charcoal, bringing you some interesting ways to use B&B Charcoal and our own version of the beer brats.
Yeah, this would be great for any tailgate, any party, just for dinner, quite honestly.
It is. And one of the things we're doing today is the beer brats. So I got over on the griddle, we're gonna be using the griddle today instead of 100% on a grill. On the griddle, I got my favorite beer that I drink. You can use any beer you want. And I got some brats. Now I used the raw brats. I didn't get pre-cooked brats. That's the wrong thing to do. And now I'm gonna use some, slice up some onion and some red pepper, put it in the beer, and I'll talk about what I did to the beer in a second. And then we'll get those cooking. Then I think you're gonna show us something special with some potatoes.
Yeah, we got a side dish of potatoes and cheese that we're gonna do to sort of keep in the whole Midwestern theme of the brats, which we'll talk about as well.
Yeah.
You wanna talk about how brats came around?
Yeah, so, you know, at least in the United States, right? The Midwest, Wisconsin, Michigan, that area, you know, they are known for the brat, right? No summer party or tailgate would be complete without it. And I'm just, you know, slicing up some onions here. You want it rather thin because you're gonna boil them and then you're gonna put them on the griddle and crisp them up. And so, you know, but the brat didn't start here, right? It actually came from Germany. So, you know, we'll talk, you know, the history there. About what, 600 years ago, I think. So I'm just taking the onion and I'm putting it here in my beer bath. And I'll put some red pepper in there as well. I'm gonna let it kind of boil in the beer here for a few minutes, pick up some of that flavor.
Yeah, I mean, words, you know, get their meaning from the areas they come from, and Bratwurst is one of those. Obviously, it's, as everybody knows, Bratwurst, Knockwurst, those are all German based. So the term Bratwurst actually comes from two different German words, Brat and Wurst. Wurst meaning sausage, which can mean, that's why you have Bratwurst, Knockwurst, a bunch of different kinds of sausages. And then brat is
Unwasted.
Unwasted, right. So basically it's
Everything.
how the folks took all the pieces that no one wanted, all the extra cuts of meat, grind it up, put it in a casing. So it's basically the wasteful parts put into a sausage casing.
Yeah, you know how we say everything but the squeal?
Everything but the squeal.
I think this even has the squeal in it.
Yeah, you know, it goes back to like the Southern heritage with barbecue. We're all, you know, Southern low and slow barbecue, and that came from the same thing. It was the cuts of meat that nobody wanted, or the cuts of meat that were left over, and they learned how to cook them low, slow, and make them just taste unbelievable. So a very similar mental view of Bratwurst coming from the German group. And of course, with the Midwest, huge German population, anywhere from Pennsylvania all the way over to Minnesota. So that's why that area is known for brats. You know, Wisconsin at Lambeau Field, you will not go to a tailgate at Lambeau Field without seeing half the people cooking brats. And most of them are going to be cooking it in beer like we're doing today. So,
Yep.
Got all that stuff over there, Bruce?
Yeah, so let me talk about the beer bath for just a second, right? So we're using our griddle here today. I got it on pretty high heat because I wanted it to boil, right? So just, you know, there's a lot of controversy about what beer you use, an ale,
the best
IPA.
beer is whatever beer you have and whatever beer you drink.
Exactly, whatever you drink, because if you don't need it, you can drink it, and it's usually what you have in the fridge. So today we're using a little PBR. I used about 3 cans. I'm using a half pan. I'm doing about 10 brats. You saw the big onion and the red pepper. So, you know, you got to cover it. It's going to take about 10 to 12 minutes of boiling, and then I'm going to sear it off on the other side.
Yeah, and what we did is we cooked the brats first, so those onions now are in the bottom, and the peppers, and they're going to get all that flavor that comes out of the seasoning and the bratwurst, and that's going to get into those onions and peppers as well.
But not only did I use the beer, right? I had to kick it up. I used our True Gold mustard in with the beer. I used about a 1/4 cup in there to get impart a little flavor.
Yep.
Put a little salt in it. I did a test run. I felt like it needed a little salt. And then, you know, I'd like to bring the heat, so I used a little habanero chili powder in there. You could use red pepper too if you wanted.
Or you can lay it out for people who don't like the heat, right?
Exactly.
It's all personal taste.
We're going to let that sit for just a minute.
Okay.
If you'll talk about the potatoes.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you. I've got most of these cooking because they do take a while. But we're going to do what we call Hasselback potatoes, and we're going to do mini ones today because, again, we're talking about doing this for tailgating or parties. So these are going to be single serving. So you can see I've got the little mini potatoes. You can do fingerlings, you can do red potatoes. These are mini Yukon Golds. And we're going to do what's called Hasselback. And that actually comes from a Swedish term. There was a restaurant back in the 50s called Hasselbacken in Sweden. And they come up with this idea of how to make these potatoes and cook them to make them a little fancier than a traditional baked potato. So that's why they come Hasselback potatoes. So what you're going to do is, the best thing to do is get a pair of, or a set of chopsticks. You could also use knives, butter knives, or anything you have. But basically what you want to do is you want to cut through the potato, but you don't want to go all the way through. So those chopsticks, or whatever you use, keeps you from going all the way through and
watch my fingers here.
Let you, yeah, it'll move around. Lets you fan it out. So I've got a whole pound of these that we've already done. And so basically when they cook, they're going to open up. So what that does is it allows you to get all those flavors inside these potatoes.
Smoke in there, et cetera.
Smoke, if you're doing them on the smoker like we did. So what you can do one of two things with these. You can parboil them, right, for maybe about 15 minutes if you don't want to leave them on the smoker for 45 minutes to an hour. You can also soak them in salt water to impart a little bit of flavor. But whichever way you do, you want to put a little bit of oil on them, a little bit of salt. I'm going to go ahead and finish these other two up real quick, and then we'll talk about the cheese sauce. So we're doing brats, and we talk about brats, talk about, you know, Wisconsin or Detroit, you know, Chicago. I mean, everybody likes cheese, right?
Yeah.
And there's nothing better to me as a side flavor for a nice brat as a cheese sauce.
Good.
So we're going to do a mustard cheddar cheese sauce. Mustard with the brats. There's going to be mustard to put on the potatoes. Just want to bring everything together. So I'm going to put these on, and then, you know, get ready to start doing the mustard.
I'll do those. You get the mustard. I mean, you get the cheese sauce going, and I'll talk a little bit about the pellets we're using over here on our smoker. So today we're using a pellet grill, and as you can see, we had the potatoes that we started earlier already done. I'm just going to leave them on here and keep them hot. So we're using the pellet smoker today and getting it up high, right? We're cooking potatoes, so we want something that's really warm. We're using B&B's competition blend pellets.
One of my favorite blends.
Yeah, I really enjoy using this, you know, when we're doing just general cooking. It's what I usually keep in my pellet grill at home. Just, you know, it's got all the good flavors that you would want. General use, great on pork, great on chicken. If you're doing high heat for searing a steak, or even doing a reverse sear on a steak, it's also good. Of course, they do have just straight post oak pellets as well, if you want to do that. And you know, one of the things I really like about just the Texas Smokehouse post oak is it's 100% post oak, right? So the other things that they make, they take all that, the chips and things like that come off of all the other wood that they've made, and they take it and they grind it up, and then they put it with a binder, an all-natural binder.
Yeah, and they do everything 100%. From their scrap. They don't buy scrap wood, they don't buy pallets, they don't buy all this other stuff.
That's right.
It's all the lumber that or the logs that they get, and the pieces that are left over.
And there's no bark in any of this stuff either. They don't use bark at all. And again, you know, even if you use their flavored woods, like the apples and cherries and stuff like that, they don't, you know, unlike some others, right? Some of the other pellet manufacturers use artificial flavorings in their pellets, and they do not. They use 100% of hardwood, of cherry or apple or whatever. Now they do mix in some post oak with that to help with the burn and the temperature. But when they say it's cherry, there's actually cherry wood in there, and not just artificial cherry flavoring smoke.
Right.
You know.
All right. So for the cheese sauce, you're going to start out with 2 tablespoons of unsalted butter. You want that to get melted, and then you're going to take 2 tablespoons of flour. And usually you do this with a whisk, but since we're out here today, I got a spoon. And basically what you want to do is you want to make sure you cook that for 30 seconds to a minute. You actually want to get the taste of that flour out of there. I'm going to move this down a little bit because that's a little hot. Once you get that in there, we're going to put a cup of milk. If I can get it open. And a couple tablespoons of mustard. Now traditionally you use the stone ground mustard, but we like our True Gold, so we're going to use our True Gold mustard sauce. And you're going to cook this, and it should only take about 3 minutes or so. It's going to really thicken up. So you're going to start it's going to start looking more like a pudding consistency. It won't take long for that flour and that milk to combine and get thickened. After that, we're going to throw the cheese in there, and then I'm going to take it off the heat, and I'm just going to stir it until that cheese melts. And then that's going to be our cheese sauce. We're primarily making this for the potatoes, but quite honestly, I'll probably put a little bit on the brats when I eat them as well, because I just
Why
love
not?
cheese sauce on there.
Because cheese, right? So while Billy's been doing that, I just kind of getting ready for our presentation a little later, right? A lot of things you eat with your eyes, so
Yep.
you want to give a nice presentation when you can. You want some things that pop. Certainly with the cheese sauce, we're going to have a little extra left over. You know, you can use a decorative bowl or whatever. I had an extra red pepper, so I've just kind of hollowed it out. We're going to use that as our cheese bowl on our plate. Now, on the bread for the brat, right? Now, I'm going to pretty much kind of square this off for our bun. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these other pieces and kind of cut them up. If you wanted to, you could drizzle some oil on them and put them in your smoker or your oven to crisp them up. And it's another, you know, thing to dip in the cheese sauce because it's cheese. So I'll do that. And then I'm pretty much just going to cut this right down the middle. Don't go all the way too deep. We're just going to put our brat in there. So I'm just going to prepare these real quick. Now the other thing, you know, we talked about that the brat came from Germany, right,
Yep.
Billy? But, you know, even within Germany, there's different regions.
Yeah.
And they get, you know, some cultures get pretty picky about who developed what, who invented what. And so, you know, 600 years ago, there was you know, two areas inside Germany. I'm going to slaughter.
Yeah, I know it's
slaughter the name.
Franconia was one of them.
Franconia.
Which is where Frankfurt's based out
And
of.
third something. Dang. And hold on, I have notes. Thuringen.
Thuringen. Yeah, there you go.
Right. So those are the two German regions that claim that they were the first to come up with the Bratwurst recipe in that. And you know, back and forth, and someone did some research, and actually the oldest recorded recipe is from the Thuringen region. But what they actually found out was through some more research.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the recipe that the Thuringians using actually came from the Celts. So it's
So
not
nobody
really,
in Germany.
not really German
Yep.
at all. But you
They
know,
made them famous, and
they
they
made
went
'em
with all the
famous.
other styles, the knockwurst and the, you know.
That's right. How's the cheese sauce coming over there?
It is getting there.
All right, and I'm just cutting up some parsley here. This is Italian flat leaf parsley. Just cutting some up so that we have, you know, a little green to pop on this.
I'm gonna leave that there. So as soon as you want to put the brats on to get some
Color?
smoke and color, I guess you can talk about how we're going to do the smoke.
Yeah.
Did you do that?
Nope, not yet. So we're going to do something a little interesting. We're using a flat top. So how do you get smoke on a flat top? Well, what I've done is I've taken a smoke tube, right? I've taken a smoke tube and I've put in a combination of these Texas Smokehouse post oak
Yep.
pellets and the post oak wood chips. And I put them in there with a B&B starter block, and I lit that. And
So you're
so
going
I
to get
have,
smoke without a lot of heat.
I have some smoke going right there, right? And I'm going to put my brats here, and I'm going to put the dome over it and let it smoke while it cooks and add a little more smoke flavor. And I'm going to get a little oil on my flat top here. But one thing you can do, right? Fire needs oxygen. So if I were to put the dome directly on the griddle, right, my fire would eventually go out because it would take up all the oxygen under the dome. I'm going to take out some onions and peppers and just kind of add them in here too. Right, so I just took a piece of aluminum foil and kind of bunched it up, and so when I put my dome on, I cover that. I had the smoke tube in there, and I just rest it on my aluminum foil so I have an air gap underneath. So air will still get under there, right? The heat is going to pull the air in from the outside of it, So I still have oxygen going
Yeah.
to my fire, right?
Got to have the fire
So
to get
I'm
the
going to
smoke.
have that smoke going.
Where there's smoke, there's fire,
Yep.
right? It's the same.
And you know, the great thing about doing the beer brats thing is you can leave it sitting in your brat.
Yeah, they're not going to get dried out when you
They're
got
not going to dry out. The other thing,
I got a half a case of beer sitting.
yeah. The other thing you can do is if you didn't have time and you were maybe doing a tailgate at the stadium or whatever, that you could actually do this the
Yes.
night before and then just take your brats and your onions and then do it on the griddle right there if you didn't have a lot of time and heat it up.
Because once it gets on the griddle, you're just going for marks, you know, and the look. You're not going for flavor. There's not a whole lot of flavor unless you're doing the smoke like we're doing with the little
right. I'm going to get one more.
Yeah, I'm going to grab a couple of the potatoes and go ahead and skewer them.
All right.
So these are the potatoes that we've had going for a while.
Whoops, sorry.
I'm just going to grab a couple, show you how they come out.
They were hot when I touched them.
Yeah,
I'll
they're
tell you that.
So these are those Hasselbacks, and you can see, maybe, how they open up. So basically, this is going to be somewhere between a French fry and a baked potato. So the outside is going to have a little bit of crunch. The inside is going to be nice and smooth like a baked potato. Now, because we're going to do these as finger food, we're going to put them on some little skewers just so you can pick them up, either dip them or put them in the cheese sauce or put cheese sauce on them. And then these will be plattered over here. Where you want these, Bruce, in the front?
Yeah, we'll do them in the front.
And then by the time I finish this, the cheese sauce, if you want to stir it and see if it's getting there.
You need to go back on the heat.
No, as long as it looks good. So these actually we did on the smoker. So these have been smoking with that competition blend pellets from B&B for about 45 minutes to an hour, even though they're that small, because I really wanted to make sure that they're nice and tender like the inside of a good French fry, a good baked potato. So we're just gonna put some in the, can we put some on them or you just want me to put them in the?
Yeah, drizzle a little on it and then put some in the thing, and I'll go ahead and take these brats off. I don't know if you were able to see the little smoke that came out there.
And this does have a little bit of the mustard sauce in there, so it's going to have a bit of a kick from that balsamic that we have in our True Gold. The cheese is really cheesy today, so it's getting everywhere. Let me grab a napkin, paper towel. So we've used pellets and chunks, but again, if you're doing this on your Kamado or your stick burner, you could use their wood, because they also have wood logs, splits, which look really nice, because like Bruce said, there's absolutely no bark on those. So competition style smokers you could use them on. We've used the lump charcoal quite often, both in our Kamados and in our stick burners.
Now, another thing I'm showing, a couple of them right here is whole.
Yeah.
But if you're at a tailgate, there's nothing wrong with either taking one of these and just kind of dicing them.
Oh yeah.
On the bias, slicing on the bias
Put
here.
toothpicks in them.
Some toothpicks.
And you can even cut the whole roll into two or three pieces to make little bite size.
Yep.
I'm gonna put a little bit of scallion in the cheese.
That's what I'm gonna do right now. So I'm gonna take. It just helps hold them together. Just gonna put a few toothpicks there while I cut it.
Cut it in half. So that's so again, we've cooked these in beer. We've got a little bit of smoke flavor from the pellets. So this is going to have multiple layers, and that's what we learn in competition is it's layers of flavor. So every time you cook it, you add a spice, you add another way you do it, you just make it a little more complex, and that people sort of notice that complexity inside of a piece of bratwurst or anything that you're cooking with. So complexity and layers is what's going to make it right.
Yep. So and just kind of Put some pop and color. I like putting some
Bruce
green
likes
around
to make
some stuff.
a mess around the side of the plate.
Yeah. So there we go. So again, we have our Deep South version of the Bratwurst with a True Gold cheese sauce and Hasselback potatoes. This would make any tailgate or party proud to have a plate like that out for your guests. This has been Bruce and Billy with Deep South Sauce Company for B&B Charcoal. We appreciate you joining us. See you next time.